TV. The truth lives here.
All right. So the question is, what do you do? What do you do with all this information? You know, you can get mad, but that's one of the reasons why I left Fox, because we have to be able to offer some solutions. So how do we relieve the pressure that has been building in our country, not just at the Occupy Wall Streets, but everywhere? My next guest has some answers. He has firsthand how to tackle the hard issues information. He has made it his life mission to try to bridge radical divides and unify the country. Dr. Tony Evans, he's a senior pastor of Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas, Texas. I hear that's a great place to live. And the president of the Urban Alternative. How are you, sir?
Delighted. Good to be
see
with
you. Neighbor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Welcome to Big D.
So, Tony, I wanted to bring you in because you are a guy who, if I have one more pastor or priest send me these books, I keep getting them. They're like, "Have you read the?" And I'm like, "Yes." And they all are saying, "Great stuff." You are a guy who, when the state has troubled youth, they call you up and say, "Can you help bridge the gap?" You are active. It's not just a church, it's a lifestyle, right?
Yeah, it's my life, it's my calling, it's my mission. And it comes fairly simple because I believe there are two answers to every question: God's answer and everybody else's is wrong. So once I start with the problem solver and the problem solution, I can go right and tackle it and save a lot of time and energy.
Okay, so I think the time for talking is done. The time for you've got to not just stand against something, you have to stand for something. So where do we go from here? How do people take the information that I just showed and then now do something about it in a positive way?
Well, when you start with the understanding that the problem is spiritual, it just shows up in economics or shows up in politics or shows up in the social arena, then you go to the spiritual answer to the problem and then begin to apply solutions to it. So whatever the problem is, I find out what God had to say about it. Then I put systems in place to apply God's answer to that reality. You take Occupy Wall Street. The concern is greed. Well, a protester came to Jesus one day in Luke 12, and he was concerned about the money due him not coming to him. And Jesus said, well, you got to watch out for all forms of greed, because he said that greed's on both sides. Greediness on both sides. On one side, you can be greedy to want it. On the other side, you can get it illegitimately or not handle it properly if you have it. He says both sides are greed. So now that I have God's answer to that, I have the answer to Wall Street.
So really, when you're looking at Wall Street, you will agree, as I will, that they're right. There are greedy people
Absolutely.
in Wall Street that have built the system. They've taken capitalism and just turned it inside out into something ugly because of greed. But you're also saying that the people who are saying take it from them are also greedy?
Absolutely, because Jesus said an employer has the right to decide what he does with his resources, and you can't complain against it if he got it legitimately and is using it properly. So again, God has given me the answer, so I just have to apply it. God has another kingdom, and he has another agenda. I call it the kingdom agenda, where he flushes out his rule in history. I'm the chaplain for the Dallas Cowboys, and when the teams come out, they're in conflict. They're not there to get along. They're going in two different directions. In the middle of the field is a team of officials. They're not obligated to any of the conflict on the field. They belong to another kingdom, 200 Park Avenue, that sets the guidelines for what happens on the field. They're able to bring calm to chaos because they're operating from a whole different orientation. We're operating on ground level, so we can't see the problem. Once you decide that God already has the answer, and then you simply apply it through your good works, you solve racial problems would have been solved a long time ago if we would have started upstairs and not started on the field of play.
We are, I have a segment coming up at the top of the hour where we have people who, of many faiths being turned against each other. We are, in every step of the way, we're being turned against each other. And then it gets to the extremes where we had that guy who called in on the radio program and he was saying, you know, it's the Jews' fault, it's the Jews' fault. It's easier to blame somebody else. It's easier to just hate somebody else and join a crowd that says, "Yeah, get them."
Again, the problem is spiritual. You see, whenever you create disunity, what you do is you remove God from the equation, because he is a unified being by nature. So he will not function in a disunified environment. Therefore, the power of unity is the participation of God in the process. The exclusion of God is always tied to disunity.
So let's talk about some things that that you're doing specifically. Tell me some things that you're doing specifically that people could get involved with, or take the idea to their church and say, this is where I channel to fix things.
Well, we started by adopting one public school in Dallas that was having problems, truancy and violence issues. It turned around when our church adopted it. One school became 18 schools, 18 schools became 65 schools that we've now adopted, providing mentoring, tutoring, and family support services, social services, good works. Well, it's grown so big that now other churches want to adopt schools across the country. So we launched the National Adopt a School Initiative, National Church Adopt a School Initiative. And we're going to try to get 2,000 churches to adopt 2,000 public schools, because those are kids. Kids have parents. Church schools and families make communities. You can rebuild communities without creating anything new, because the infrastructure for all three are already there, and you don't have to deal with the separation of church and state issues, because you go in as a social service provider. Separation of church and state should never mean separation of God and good works. And so God's people can do good things in that arena. So what do you do?
You go in and you adopt a school. What are you doing?
Okay. One lady to 4 girls, one man to 4 boys. Because a lot of these kids aren't doing well in school because of family breakdown. God said I'd be a mother to the motherless and a father to the fatherless. He didn't mean a floating spirit in Never Never Land. He meant it'd be surrogate parenting through his people. So now the kids have love, and now the kids are being reinforced with life, then they are now going to function better academically. But now the church can also provide support systems to the families who need them.
So help me out on this. Give me a specific example. Well, the person goes to your church and say, "Okay, I want to be involved in this." What are they doing?
Okay, what they do is they go through our one-day little training that we give, and then we assign them to a school. The school will assign them 4 students that they meet with on a weekly basis, and then
individually or
no, as a group. In a group, they can do it individually, but usually as they get 1 or 4. And then whatever the church's social service systems are that we can support with, food or clothing or housing or job training or job placement, we provide that for the parents of that child. So we become a holistic provider. We can do what the government can't do because we're closest to the need. And so we do that as a church. So the church does good works. We do it in the name of our faith without forcing people to join our church or anything like that. So we're doing good works, and now we can't keep up with the schools begging us to come.
Okay, so now, and that's amazing. So help me out on this. How do you... I just had a discussion with my sister over the summer, and we go to different churches, and she got mad at me because I said, listen, she's on the charitable arm or board of her church. And I said, she said, we have a hard time, to figure out, we have to be led by the Spirit on who we can help and who we can't. And I said, help those who help themselves. Help those who help themselves. Make sure that you're expecting something in return, and not in return, but that they're doing something, that you're not just giving, that you're not just creating dependency, and you're not just giving stuff away.
Well, God never subsidizes irresponsibility.
Right.
So you can't be irresponsible and then tell God to come and bail you out. That is to tempt the Lord thy God.
And that's what I
So
say.
you call for an action.
Right. You change the behavior, whatever it is that got you into that.
Absolutely.
Change that behavior. Otherwise, we can't help you.
God put it this way. He that hath will be given more. He that does not have, that which he has will be taken away from him. You have to do something with what you have for God to build on that.
Okay, if a church would be watching right now and they wanted to get involved, how do they get involved?
They simply simply log on to TonyEvans.org, and it'll take them to the National Church Adopt a School Initiative. And we have a training program that we can take them through.
How are you getting by the honestly, it's not even just separation of church and state. This country is becoming so bigoted against faith and those members of God, unless you're Islamic, that you can't get within a mile of somebody who even says God.
Well, that may be true in some suburban communities. It's rarely true in the urban community because the church has been so integral in everything that's happened in our community. We would not be where we are in urban America without the church. But now urban problems have now become suburban problems. And the breakdown of the family and the breakdown of the morals and the drugs and all of that. So when you have to put metal detectors up in your hallway, you don't want to talk about church and state. You want to talk about help. And so communities are opening up because we respect the boundary. We know what the boundary is without apologizing for who we are.
It is, it's incredible to me. I mean, one of the reasons why we moved to Texas, or we're moving to Texas, is I haven't been around. I mean, I walk down the streets of New York and I hear language, and my little kids there, language that is beyond, as my grandfather used to say, saloon language. Mm-hmm. You go down to Texas and I hear more talk about God, real talk mm-hmm. about God. Not people saying, "No, I love God," and then they're going to the, saloon, right. But real talk about impact. There is a difference in parts of the country where God is actually practiced, not just talked about or chased out.
Well, absolutely. Where you're located, the influence of the church, the well-being of the culture is tied to the influence of the church. When the church, when the levees broke in New Orleans, the city was flooded because that which was designed to hold back that which would bring damage was no longer up. When the church is not doing its job, the culture sinks. And that is why the issue is spiritual at its core, and that is why dealing with the spiritual underpinnings is key to dealing with the economics, politics, education, or whatever it happens to be.
People go to church. When I was going to church many years ago, I was going to a church that didn't. It was like out of obligation almost. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going and I wasn't getting anything to apply in my real life. Now I pray that I can make it to Sunday mm-hmm. to get refilled. But it's not something that's for Sunday. It really is active.
Well, yes. The whole idea is that the church is to equip you to be the person you were created to be under the rule of God. Civil government, church government, and family government is all designed to make better self-government so that you govern yourself properly in how you think, how you act, how you talk, how you walk. When those governments fail in producing proper self-government, you have chaos in society.
I love this guy. Name of the book is The Kingdom Agenda and Oneness Embraced. I will be seeing you again, my friend.
Look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Back in just a minute with, I don't know, you keep seeing these. Back in just a minute with something a story that I heard coming out of supposedly the Vatican, that the Pope, really? The Pope is for one world government? Can that possibly be true? The answer, I don't think you've heard anyplace else. Coming up. That's this weekend that I'm going to be at like 400 different cities. Make sure that you join me if I'm in your area. You can find out all the details at glennbeck.com. All right. Tony was just talking about self-government. That really is the key, to be self-reliant. That's why you're here, I believe. There are a lot of people that understand self-reliance, but we haven't done it for a long time, and we don't really even, there's things that we don't even really recognize anymore. Food. Food is so plentiful. It is, it's so easy to go to the grocery store 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in most cities. that it's hard to believe that food or that system could ever break down. It has broken down from time to time. If the system, God forbid, breaks down globally, perhaps not here, but around the world there will be starvation unlike the world has perhaps ever seen. Food insurance is the way I've protected my family. And this is not something like, hey, I'm going to pay into a system and someday they'll deliver food to me. This is actually having food insurance. This is having the food there. It's basically the new version of what our grandparents used to do when they canned. And we had a year's worth of food, you know, and soup and everything else down in the basement. That's what we used to do all summer. Now, food insurance has done it the modern way. I want you to go to foodinsurance.com and find out for yourself if they can help you. This is a great company run by great people, really, really good food. This is how I prepared my family. Foodinsurance.com. Call 866-9-GOT-FOOD. Do it now.
Many people are surprised to learn that